Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to the Audit and Governance Committee on the 25th of November 2024. I'd like to welcome all members, advisors who are in attendance and officers who are in attendance. Thank you for coming, especially if it's in person, and appreciated. Just go through initially for apologies. Just look for apologies for non-attendance. I think we have apologies from...
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Jim Hakewell and Councillor Ian Jelly.
Thank you. I understand Councillor Hakewell has had some problems with flooding, so we wish him all the best at this difficult time. And thank you for that. And our normal officer is unable to be in attendance today, Callum, so we wish him all the best as well. Moving on to the second item, it's for members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest members have which are relevant to the agenda on this meeting? No? In which case I'll move on to the minutes of the meeting for the 23rd of September 2023. See if there are any points to raise from those minutes. What I will direct members to at this point is the action log at the back, which is now being done, and I'm quite pleased about that. There's, as you can see from a quick look at that, there's all the items have been completed. There's 2 which are in progress, and I'll just look to Claire initially to update on number 1 of those, which is in relation to the 6-monthly review of budget manager training rollout. Can you just update us briefly on that, please?
Certainly, Chair. So what we have done and started to do is we've now put together some work streams within the finance team, and budget training or finance training in general is one of those work streams. So we just started that in September, and we'll look to start rolling out an active budget manager training programme just after New Year. But I'll keep you up to date and posted as to when we start doing that, and we are looking to try and make that training mandatory for all budget holders.
Thank you for that update. And then you can see on the item number 6, there was an action there for myself and David Watts to meet up, which we did do. We spoke about some of the issues that came out of the last meeting. I'll give a bit more information on that when we get to the risk management side, because one of the things was we wanted it very much reflected in the risk register, and you'll see in the agenda later that that's been added into the risk register. Perhaps have a discussion at that point. One of the points which the officer made was very keen that we focus on the risks and not stray into scrutiny, which that point was made to me, and I acknowledge that, and we should ensure that we endeavour to concentrate more on the controls and the risk side, which we always try and do, but sometimes that can deviate off a little bit. One further point, it's not on the list here. We did speak about it last time, and so I'll ensure that it gets put on the action log for this time. We asked Claire to put on about looking into those long outstanding matters on the audit recommendations, because they weren't getting cleared off, and Section 151 officer took away an action there. It's not on this log, but I'll ask Claire to update us on that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair. So what we have done is we've started to go through all the old outstanding recommendations, working with each directorate. We're asking them to review anything that's no longer relevant, or recommendations where we're happy to accept the inherent risk, or if they need to be changed, then the recommendation needs to be revised accordingly. So we have started to work through that. So we have seen a shift in some of the recommendations, unfortunately not enough as I would like. So we will be continuing this work, and we will be bringing this to the attention of CLT on a regular monthly basis to ensure that these recommendations are managed appropriately and done in a timely manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update. I'll just see if there's any comments from members on the minutes. And if not, could I look for a proposer for those, please? Councillor Lee, and the seconder, Councillor Marks. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. So now we're able to move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 4 is the financial statements of accounts for 21-22 and 22-23. And then agenda item 5 is the external audit for those accounts. So we'll get the discussions from the relevant officers and the advisor, and then we'll come back after we've done the accounts and the audit, and then come back to do the recommendations. Otherwise we'll be looking to approve the accounts before we've heard from the auditors. I thought it was best to get the view of the auditors before we go back to point 4. So agenda item 4 is the financial statements. So we now have 21-22 and 22-23. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to Dean, Chief Principal Accountant, and he'll present those items. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out the draft statement of accounts for both 21-22 and 22-23 for approval by this committee and follows the statutory requirements. The draft statement of accounts for 21-22 can be found at Appendix A, and that's accompanied by the letter of representation at Appendix C. The draft statement of accounts for 22-23 can be found at Appendix B, with the accompanying letter of representation at Appendix D. Both of these sets of accounts were signed by the Section 151 officer and published on our website on the 17th of October. In accordance with the governance process, this committee are required to receive and approve these sets of accounts. The report does touch on the challenges previously reported to this committee across local government accounts and audit, which has resulted in the government approving legislation which sets a backstop date for local government audits for these years of the 13th of December. At this point, I just wanted to make the committee aware that the 23-24 statements have also been published on the Council's website, with a link embedded in the report. These accounts are the same sets applied to the auditors, which we are progressing through the external audit process with our external audit colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I just see if any members have any comments or questions in relation to those. There's a huge amount of information there. If not, I'll hand over to the external auditor, and if you can explain the position of these and the unique position of these in relation to the audit thereof, and I think you mentioned you would give us a view of the wider context within the country as well. That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Mark Stocks, because I don't, just in case those who don't know me. This is a unique position, but it's not just a unique position for Northamptonshire. It's a unique position, I think, for local authorities across the country. I think it's well known in terms of the level of backlog in local government accounts. I think at the moment there's over 1,000 local government accounts that are outstanding, and so there needed to be a resolution. And in response, the government, I think rightly, has put through what we loosely refer to as the backstop legislation, which basically draws to a close all accounts up to and including 22-23 by the 13th of December this year. And he's done that for a number of reasons, but mainly because we had to bring this to an end. You know, every set of accounts, such as your own, would take about 5 months to actually do the audit. And so, you know, you can imagine if I was picking up the 21-22, 22-23 accounts, it would be another year before I started to look at the 23-24. So, and we have to catch up. So we have to start to talk to you about what's happening in the current financial year and the previous financial year, because too many auditors aren't reporting those facts to councils, and so you then don't have independent assurance about what's happening now. So all you're doing is waiting on accounts that are very old. So we're issuing quite a few of these. So across the country, I think the other firms are issuing quite a few more. So, but we, there are some that we're working on. I think your circumstances are slightly different to other organisations we work with. Obviously, when you became a new authority, you were left with quite a lot of old accounts that you had to deal with, and as well as setting up a new authority. So your finance team obviously had to deal with those because it had to get a base, it had to get surety over the opening balances for you, so it could then produce the accounts, which has meant it's taken them a while to produce the 21-22 and 22-23 accounts. So what we've agreed with you previously and discussed with officers is that we need to comply with the government's legislation, which requires us to backstop these accounts. So we've worked through the processes that we're required to do. We have minimised those, so we haven't done we've not done any detailed testing on the 21-22 or 22-23 accounts, and that means that we have to disclaim the accounts. You're not alone. As I said, there's over 1,000 accounts outstanding, and a lot of authorities will get a disclaimed opinion. So the opinions you have in front of you is a standard disclaimed opinion. There's nothing in addition. There's nothing that we're kind of pointing to in terms of where you've not followed your appropriate governance processes or where there's significant financial sustainability issues. I'll just talk you quickly through the papers so you know where you are, and then I'll hand over to questions. So on page 290, we've done a very brief sort of summary of the facts as I've just set out. So page 290 deals with 21-22. It just talks about the disclaimed opinion. Obviously, we've done the value for money work, and we've reported that to you previously, and it sort of confirms that we're independent. And then moving on to page 293, we've just tried to set out the various requirements of auditing standards and then how we've complied with those as best we can in these circumstances. On page 294, where we have done work, so particularly for 21-22, we undertook an IT audit, so we have reported those findings at the end of page 294.
Mr. Chairman, but those of us who have printed copies don't have these numbers, which is somewhat frustrating, to put it mildly. So could you be a bit more specific as to what exactly you're referring to, please? Because we've just got a big jumble of papers and we don't know what page numbers you're referring to.
I've taken the public agenda pack off the net.
No, I'm sure that's right, but to say those of us who are using printed copies don't have these numbers on.
Right. So which version do you have?
Unfortunately, we've had some problems with the papers and the numbering, so it was beyond the control. So that's understandable. So if we can,
unfortunately, as a one-off on this agenda, each of the reports had to be printed individually in order to be able to get out to you, because there was issues with the main agenda pack, so we couldn't print it in the normal fashion. So if those presenting reports can be a bit more illustrative of sort of the headings that they're describing, that would be appreciated.
Can I share screens?
Let's have a look.
Probably not.
Can try. Can you give me your email address?
yes.
This is a backstop. Is it a one-off? And are we going to be in a position where we are not going to lose grasp of reality?
I'll come back to the section 151 offers on that, because we've got these two which are covered under this backstop, and then there's a plan to report through, as Dee mentioned, on the 23-24, which we're intending to receive at the January meeting.
We're not going to go through all of this again. We are going to be back on course with proper figures at the right appropriate time.
23-24 is the last accounting period that is covered by the backstop arrangements. I'll check with Mark that my understanding is correct there, but that's what I believe, that that is our last year. So that's got a slightly later date than these two earlier years. Then the most recent year, 23-24, if we approve those in the January, we will be able to meet that backstop. We'll be able to meet that deadline, and then we're back into the normal routine. And I'll ask Director Lorna to explain that once we're trying to see if we can get things displayed on the screen at the moment. I don't know if Claire or Dean, you'd like to add something about, because that point was just raised there, about the 23-24 and the timing for those. I think it was mentioned briefly, but perhaps we can add a little bit more on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we're currently undertaking our audit for 23-24 and working towards ensuring that we will be able to have those accounts fully audited and published before the backstop date in February 25. So that's our intention. So they will be our first full audited set of accounts. So as far as we are concerned, currently, it will be a one-off that they're using the backstop date in statutory powers in order to get rid of the backlog that we're currently experiencing right across the whole of local government. And once we're beyond that, then we'll fall back into the normal statutory cycle.
Okay, thank you for that update. I'm just looking to see if we're in a position where we can share.
I would talk to this. No problem.
I will share the copy of the papers, and so whenever a presenter refers to a page, I shall bring it up on screen. Which page?
Page 290 or 291. Can you find that one? Yeah, so Appendix A. So it just in terms of the question that you were talking about, so there are a series of backstop dates. So the legislation slowly brings them forward. So there's 23-24, the backstop date is February 25. For 24-25, it's February 26. And then for 26-27, it's November 26. So the government's sort of bringing this forward to make sure that authorities deliver and their auditors deliver the accounts on time. So while we can continue to work till February for this year and next year, for the year after, then we have to bring it forward. We have to start to hit November. The issue that you have when you disclaim an opinion is that you have to rebuild the assurance, because effectively you don't have assurance over opening balances, and that takes at least 2 to 3 years to rebuild that assurance. So in terms of your accounts for 23-24, then they're likely to be qualified, and in terms for your accounts for 24-25, that should have a lesser qualification on. So you're really looking at sort of the year after before you start to get full assurance. But that's not just you, that's lots of other councils across the country. This is a significant rebuild of assurance for local government. So in terms of the papers you have in front of you, then this one on page 290, which is Appendix A, just sets out for 21-22 that we're backstopping the audit. And then in the appendices to that, on page 293 onwards, it just takes you through the audit planning process and some findings on page 294 around IT. But effectively, we've not done a lot of work. We've hardly done any work, which is why the opinion's been disclaimed. And then if you move on to Appendix B, which is on page 297, that is just the opinion that you get on your 21-22 accounts. And then I'm going to move quickly now. So if you go to Appendix C, which is on page 301, this sets out the same for 22-23. There are a few more value for money findings, so they're set out on 302, but we've been through those before. It was around managing the spend at the Children's Trust. It was around sorting out disaggregation, and it was around sorting out your accounts. But then there was also recommendations around housing, if you recall this time last year. And then again, it just runs through the standard processes that we worked through on pages 305 onwards. And then in Appendix D, it just sets out the disclaimed opinion. It's taken longer than I anticipated, Chair. I'm going to pause there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Just look to see if any members have any questions or comments. Councillor Level.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several comments, or several questions actually. On page, now I've only got page 103 of the accounts, and heaven knows what number that's supposed to be. But it says the auditor's remuneration, section 45, auditor's remuneration for 2021-2022. And it says £350,000 payable to Grant Thornton LLP, but in Mark's report on page whatever it is, it says audit fees, non-audit fees, £105,000. How's that different?
So the audit fees are set by Public Sector Appointments Limited, so PSAA. So at every year they set what they call the scale fee, and for you it was set at 350,000. We haven't done anywhere near that amount of work. That's for a full audit where we do all the work. So the fee reflects the actual work that we've done rather than the scale fee.
Sorry, no, I understand that. But my question is, why are we not showing the real fee in the accounts?
Claire, would you like to answer that point? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The number that's shown in the accounts is what we have physically paid, because we paid in advance for those audit fees as per the scale fee. And then obviously at that point in time, we didn't then undertake the audit work. So within the accounts, we would have shown what we've actually paid, not what they have utilised or drawn down of that money.
If I can follow up on that, okay, fine, but we now know what it is. So you're asking us to approve accounts with the wrong audit fee.
But we've physically paid 350,000. So
I understand that, but it's an overpayment.
yes, it would be. And I'm sure that will probably be reflected further on in the accounts in 23-24. It's just because we're doing these so back-to-back that we would not have probably made that adjustment because it's not material to make.
No, I understand it's not material. I understand materiality. It's just a number that people tend to focus on. Let's move on, because I have another question about the accounts in general. As Mark has pointed out, for all the good reasons, and I totally, as an ex-auditor, I totally understand where you're coming from. Grant Thornton are going to disclaim their opinions. The recommendation in this agenda item is that this committee approves the 2021, 22, 22 and 22, 23 accounts. How can we possibly approve? I'm happy to note the accounts. How can we possibly approve them if they haven't been audited? I, for one, would find that extremely difficult as a chartered accountant.
Okay, I'll note that observation. Yeah, we'll come to the discussion on the recommendations and take that accordingly. Any other points, Councillor Level?
Sorry, I hadn't finished. 2023-2024. Again, Mark's just explained that the backstop is February 2025, and therefore time is short. And again, I totally understand that. As I'm an ex-auditor, I understand where you're coming from. However, I'm troubled by the fact that this is a large unitary authority. People keep saying it's the largest unitary authority in the country. We are issuing three sets of accounts with effectively a disclaimed opinion. If Grant Thornton can't get comfortable with the opening balances as at 1st of April 2023, if I say, well, what can we do about it? You are no doubt going to say there's not enough time, and I understand that, but it's a pretty, and it's nobody's fault in this room. I'm not pointing any fingers, but it's a pretty dire situation for an authority such as this dealing with public money that can't issue. That can't issue accounts on which a clean audit opinion, an unqualified audit opinion, can be given. And I just think it's really unfortunate. I'd like that minuted, that it's really unfortunate that we're not in a position to do that.
Okay. Mark, would you like to make a comment on any of those observations?
Thank you, Chair. So we have the 23-24 accounts. We're working really closely with your officers in terms of trying to get assurance. So we're a substantial way through the balance sheet and through the CIS. As you say, Councillor, we won't have assurance over opening balances, and to be candid, there's no way to get that without doing another audit. So which there just isn't the time or capacity, to be candid. So I think we're in a good state to start building assurance. If we didn't have accounts for 23-24, if we'd not started the audit, I would be really concerned. But the fact that we're not there, that we do have accounts, and that we're working hard to try and rebuild that assurance gives me comfort that over time we will be able to get you back into the right place.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I can just follow up on that one. You say
hang on. Sorry. Through the chair, please.
Sorry, can I just
through the chair.
Can I through you?
Through me, please.
Can I just follow up on that? When you say over time, if you are auditing the March 24 balance sheet, presumably that means that all other things being equal, you'll be able to issue an unqualified opinion on 25. All other things being equal, because you'd be happy with the opening balances. Is that right?
Yeah, if you could answer that.
Chair. So I'll give you an auditor's answer. It depends. So you'll be because there's certain things that it's going to take us time to rebuild. So areas like usable reserves, which are dependent not just on the current year transactions, but they're dependent on previous years. So in some areas where we've audited the closing balances, like property, then it's easy to go, yes, I've got an opening balance, I've got a closing balance, and we can probably do that on pensions and borrowing. There are a number of areas where we can do that, not on reserves, unfortunately, and that's one of the conversations I'm having with the NEO and the government about, well, what do we do to gain assurance over reserves? So we are, I think, all hedging our bets in terms of, because we've never done this either, so just about, well, when will we get to a clean opinion? And we'll get there as quickly as we can, Councillor.
Okay, Claire, would you like to add something there, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, I take your point around the opening balances, and obviously from our perspective of officers, we are extremely disappointed that we're not able to have our accounts audited in the manner that they should be. However, what I would say, whilst we're not able to provide assurance directly through an unqualified audit opinion, we do have some assurance because the accounts that we are taking the closing balances from have all been audited, and they are our opening balances. So I do feel that there is some assurance that we can have sort of running through the accounts, that we will be able to get to, as you say, the unqualified audit opinion in time. It's just unfortunate as an organisation we're caught up in this backlog, and we're not being differentiated around from an LGR perspective because we are different in that situation where we've not been given more time to be able to undertake that, given the scale and size that we are and the organisational changes that we've had to undertake, and actually pulling together 4.5 organisations into one is quite monumental. And I do think, you know, we are on a really good trajectory in terms of what we've been able to produce and what we will continue to produce. So, you know, whilst we can't get the assurance from the auditor, there is that underlying assurance that in terms of what we started from has been an audited set of accounts.
I think that's a really important point, because by far and away the most material aspect of those opening balances was the county council, and that disaggregation is relatively recent for whatever reason. So, I mean, I wish as much as everybody else does and did that we could have got here earlier. I don't think it was possible given the circumstances nationally and specifically locally, which I think we're not out of step, is what you're saying with the national picture, and ours is seriously compounded by the challenges we had over disaggregation, which I know Mark was quite frustrated in his first appointment here, and I don't know if that's what caused it, but we seem to, and you seem to move that on quite quickly in short order thereafter, so that helped us. And I think we've moved quite a way in recent times, and although it doesn't seem like it, I acknowledge that council level it doesn't seem like it, but I think we've been going through this journey for the last three and a half years now, and it has been paved with frustration by many of us, but I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think the 23-24 at the January committee will be moving more towards that. Granted, and I think Mark's given the view there that it will be difficult from an auditor's perspective to give an unqualified opinion, so we should expect that then as well. But it'll be another level. I think Claire talked about it. It's like Mark talked about it. It's building the levels of insurance over a period of time because it dropped off significantly and it needs to be rebuilt. And I think we're going through a rebuilding phase, and I think everybody's got to be cognizant of that, and we've all got a job to explain to our councillors and to our, to members of the public, because it's difficult for them to understand why we're here with this major authority without fully audited opinions on the accounts. So, but I do get it. Claire, would you like to add something there?
Yeah, if I could just add one last comment, and it really is a thanks to my team who've done a fantastic job, led by my colleague here, Dean Mitchell, in terms of producing 3 sets of accounts to the scale and the size of this organisation in a time frame that we've been able to commit to. And we are on target to also start delivering the 24-25 accounts within the timescale set out that's in statutory. So we will be coming back with the accounts for the new financial year, which hasn't quite finished yet. And that's our target, and that's what we want to take pride in, is that we will be here on time, in the timescales that we want to set out as a unitary this size in 24-25. And I say thank you to my whole team in being able to produce the accounts as we have done so far. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we note that in the minutes. Whilst we're giving thanks to people, I think it's been a step change with Grant Thornton, actually, because whilst we're all frustrated, we recognise that you're doing a good job, and I was not able to say that about your predecessors. I found that extremely frustrating, and I didn't feel that we were helped in any way. Now, I think these auditors have been challenging in a good way, but I think they've worked really well for us, and I'd like to thank you for that, because it's a good position, and we're getting there, I believe. So I think we should recognise that. So thanks to lots of people at the moment. Shall we? Would you like to add any more on the audit side? And if not, I'm going to go back to agenda item 4 and look to the approval of the accounts. No. Okay, thank you. No problem. Okay, so now I'm going to flick you back to the agenda item 4, which was about the financial statements of the accounts. So the recommendations are fourfold there, and 3.1. obviously I think there's some concern from some members, and council levels expressed this concern, so I'll take these as each of the subsections separately, so if people want to record their different views, they're able to. So the first part of the recommendation is 3.1a is to approve the draft statement of accounts for financial year 21-22, and the letter which is in Appendix A, and the letter of representation in Appendix C. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Eakins, and the seconder? Councillor Marks. Will all those in favour please show? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favour. All those against? None. And any abstentions? 3. So that's carried. Thank you. The next recommendation under 3.1b is to approve the draft statement of accounts for the financial year 22-23 in Appendix B and the draft letter of representation in Appendix D. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Eakins. And the seconder, please. Councillor Marks. All those in favour, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are in favour. Any abstentions? Abstentions? 3 abstentions, none against. Thank you. Sorry, I got that in the wrong order then, didn't I? Just making sure everyone's awake. Under 3.1c, the recommendation is any non-material adjustments required to the draft statement of accounts for the financial year 21-22 and 22-23 are delegated to the Council's Executive Director of Finance and Performance, Section 151 officer, in consultation with the Chair of Audit and Governance Committee. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Eakins, and a seconder. Councillor Marks, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous, thank you. And we're also being asked to note the position for the 23-24 Statement of Accounts. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Eakins and Councillor Marks is seconding. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now move on to agenda item 5 and the recommendations therein. So under 3.1 in that section, this is recommended that the Audit and Governance, under 3.1a, is recommended that the Audit and Governance Committee receives the draft audit finding report for the financial year 21-22, which is in Appendix A, and the draft disclaimer opinion in Appendix B. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Level, and seconder, Councillor Lee. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. And the second recommendation under 3.1b is that we receive the draft audit findings report for the financial year 2022-23, which is in Appendix C, and the draft disclaimer opinion, Appendix D. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Level, and the seconder, Councillor Lee. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. So that's quite a hefty piece of business to get through there. So that brings us on to agenda item 6, which is a review of the Corporate Governance Code. I think members know we had some training earlier on, which was delivered by the Deputy Monitoring Officer, Camilla Coulson-Patel, and that was very useful. I think it's time now that this committee is very much focused on the audit part of the audit and governance, and we've perhaps had some elements of the governance part which we've had to put back in the background a little bit. So this is part of us getting back our focus on those areas. And there's a review of the Corporate Governance Code under agenda item 6, and I'll hand over to Camilla now to present this. Thank you, Camilla.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for having me today to present this report for you. Just for the benefit of members, hopefully the page numbers align. It's 311 in your reports pack to 315. Agenda item 6. It's the review of the Code of Corporate Governance. And members will recall that a session was delivered over the summer to take some feedback as part of the review of this Code of Corporate Governance. And as the Chair's already set out, it is the intention to bring more governance reports to this committee to raise awareness and progress the work, the very important work relating to governance. The Code itself is a public statement that sets out the way the Council will meet its commitment in demonstrating it has the necessary governance arrangements in place. The Code itself was last updated in 2021 and it has been reviewed in preparation of this report. It remains legally compliant as the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015 and the Delivering Good Governance in Local Government Framework 2016 haven't been updated since this document was adopted. However, the Code has itself been updated, as members will see at Appendix A, pages 317 to 339, with some changes to improve readability, signposting, and to highlight key documents within the table. There has also been further changes, which are shown at Appendix A, to emphasise the importance of the principles. So further information has been inserted within that. Members, the changes are slight in number, and I would invite you to consider the recommendations as set out in the report at paragraph 3.1, which is to agree and adopt the updated Code of Corporate Governance and to receive an update in 6 months to have a matrix of compliance to highlight the awareness which has taken place within the organisation. Chair, that's the outline of the report, trusting that members have already taken the opportunity to read it in advance. But I will be pleased to take any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know if members have any questions. I know we've had some challenges again with the papers, so okay, it doesn't look like there's any points. Could I just one point of clarification about you've referred to a further update at 6 months. What is the plan going forward for ongoing updates, and what frequency will that be on thereafter?
So best practice in relation to this particular document would that an annual report would be brought to this committee. It may well be that the document itself doesn't require further refresh in future, but in terms of good governance, you would expect to receive this on an annual basis. Okay.
And one other link point. In the last committee, we spoke about this, the review of the Code of Corporate Governance and the Monitoring Officer report. Can you explain to me where we are in terms of the annual Monitoring Officer report and what the plans are there as well, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be pleased to update the committee on that. We understand that it has been a desire of this committee to receive a report of the Monitoring Officer, recognising that the work of the Monitoring Officer does overspill into other committees, so we have democracy and standards. It would be timely to bring an update before the end of this election cycle to both the democracy and standards and audit and governance, covering the work of the Monitoring Officer, to bring that update on the work that's been done so far, as well as a look to the future.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will be getting that in January meeting as well. So, yes, Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I know we haven't had full time to look at it, but I like the fact it's being brought forth in front of us now, because we needed this, and I like the way it's been presented in track changes as well. So thank you very much for preparing this. And it's nice that we will have another opportunity to look at this and that it's regularly refreshed. So it's a positive move. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions or observations? If not, I'll go to the recommendations in 3.1, which is the committee agree and adopt the Code of Corporate Governance in Appendix A. Can I look for a proposer for that, please? Councillor Lee and Councillor Marks is seconding. All those in favour, please show, which is unanimous. And the 3.1b, to receive a further update is 6 months showing a matrix of compliance to provide assurance to the committee that there is organisational awareness of the document. If I could look for a proposer, Councillor Marks and Councillor Lee. Sorry, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us on to the next agenda item, which is the Audit and Governance Committee annual report, which I've had significant help in preparing by Rachel, and the report is being introduced by Rachel. So if I could hand over to you and lead this item, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is in line with the committee's standard cycle for issuing annual reports. So this is due for this meeting, and it will then go to the next meeting of the council. So it's intended to capture the work of the committee and celebrate and publicise the work of the Audit and Governance Committee to raise the profile of that, really, and covers the period from the 1st of October 23 through to the 31st of September 2024. So it covers the key elements of the committee's role and the work that's been conducted during that period, the attendance at the meetings, and also recognises things like the training that's been completed as well. So how you've developed and improved your awareness of key issues during that year as well. So this report does belong to this committee, so obviously I welcome any feedback and I'd be happy to support with any further amendments. But obviously if it's agreed today, we would then put it onto the agenda for the next council meeting for sharing for information. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, and it is based on the approach we've adopted in previous years.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Hi, thank you for that. Yeah, just to note, when it says in support of constitutional requirements, 3 independent persons should be appointed to the committee. And I'm just conscious that I've been here for over a year now. Where are we with getting more people, if that's a stated intention?
I'll add something there. We've gone out to advert on LinkedIn looking for some additional members. I haven't received an update. I know Callum was leading that, or he was the conduit through which I got my updates. I don't know if you've got anything, Ben. If not, we'll feed back to the committee the status of that separately outside of the meeting, because I haven't heard anything further.
Yeah, if we can provide you with an update, we'll provide you with an update directly, Chair, and we'll add it into the audit log. Is that okay?
Certainly. Yeah, is that...
Yeah, it'd be useful to know if I could see the LinkedIn link, and then we could perhaps we could share it with people who we think would be relevant.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
so if you could
we'll provide the link so that you can help sort of, advertise.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure amongst us we know people. I just haven't seen the link, so it would be useful if I could.
Yeah, we'll get that out to you. I can get that out to you straight after the meeting.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other points to raise on this agenda item? Councillor Lee?
Thank you. Just the constitution of this committee is on page 5. It shows one councillor. I can't remember when she ceased being a councillor. Councillor Smith-Haynes, but of course this looks back, not forward, so I can't remember when she ceased being a councillor. Was it in September or before? Just sort of really, maybe it's pedantic, just for accuracy.
I think it says in the report that she was until August 2024. Does that? Yeah, I think under her picture.
Thank you, Chair. And my membership doesn't look good, but one meeting was changed, and it's always a problem with daytime meetings for people who are working. So, sorry, I just wanted to say that because it doesn't look good. Thank you.
Lots of input when you're here, though. That's the main point. Sorry. If there's no further comments to add, it's recommended that the committee approves the annual report for presentation to Council. Councillor Marks, Councillor Anslow, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. And the second one of 5 agenda items for Rachel is agenda item 8, the anti-fraud and corruption and anti-bribery policies. I'll hand over to Rachel to present this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council's current anti-fraud and corruption and anti-bribery policies were adopted in 2021. So these were due for review. So we've obviously looked at the latest good practice and tried to align our policies with that, and also reflect how we've developed as an organisation in terms of our maturity around these risk areas as well. So the 2 policies that are brought to you today are not amended versions. These are completely fresh policies, hence there aren't track changes and so on within the document. So these are new documents in line with the latest guidance, including the LGA's guidance on fighting fraud and corruption locally from the LGA. So that's the basis and the format for the policies that are brought to you today. We have consulted with key members of the key leadership team, including within the legal team, on both of these, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on the content. If these are approved today, these will then go onto the Council's intranet and external internet pages as well, so that people are aware of how we counter fraud and that we have a zero tolerance approach as an authority. So I will happy to take any questions, Chair, but I'll hand over to the committee at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Just for my information, so when we have a new policy, is there an obligation of sort of all members of staff to read it or not? And is that monitored?
Through you, Chair. So when we have a new policy adopted, particularly one of these that is one that's important that everyone corporately is aware of, we would usually do an awareness campaign as part of that. So we will make use of the internal comms and make sure there's awareness around that. We do also have a counter-fraud awareness training package, which it was Fraud Awareness Week last week, so we made use of that to promote that and encourage people to take up the e-learning package, which makes reference to these policies as well. So we'll try to strengthen the comms around that as well. There wouldn't necessarily be an approach to tick to say you've read them, for example, but we try to raise awareness as much as we can through those processes.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we can also highlight it in regular members' bulletin. So we'll do that and draw attention to it and provide a bit of background as well.
Okay, thank you for that. That's useful. Councillor Eakins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question, if I may, through you, Chair, to Rachel. We're going through a number of policies now that are being reviewed and asked to be approved and recommendations being made. Is there a standard timescale for reviewing and amending policies, or is it just as and when needed?
Through you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So there isn't a corporate process, as far as I'm aware, in terms of a standard agreement on each policy. What I would tend to do with our policies is we would determine within the policy when we would expect it to be next due for review, and I'm proposing that these would be subject to annual review, just because it's such a key area and we want to make sure we're aligning with the latest guidance. So the reason we've had a slight delay in bringing this back to you is making sure that your terms of reference fully reflected your ability to approve the documents. So what I would propose is from this point forward, we would bring them back to you annually just to keep those up to date.
Certainly, yes.
Sorry, is there a register of reviews and policies that need all coming up for review? I know you're saying about annual review, which is good, actually doing it on a yearly basis. I know some don't need to be done for 2, 3 or even 4 years, but is it a kind of a table or register of ones that are coming up to review or have been reviewed?
Chair, I'm happy to pick that one up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, corporately we have identified through each directorate all of the policies and the owners, the date of the last review and the date of the future review. And as I understand it, CLT monitor that as well as the monitoring officer.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that's something that will come in an annual monitoring officer's report, something like that? Would that find its way in there, do you think?
Certainly could.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Any further questions? If not, have we done the we haven't done the anti-bribery one. Yeah, done it across the two. So it's recommended that the Audit and Governance Committee approves the anti-fraud and corruption policy and approves the anti-bribery policy. Councillor Marks and Councillor Eakins, all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. And the next agenda item, which I think came out separately, is the strategic risk register. So if I could hand over to Rachel on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is the latest update on the Council Strategic Risk Register. So as usual, I'm presenting this and facilitating the management of the document, but obviously we will maintain independence from the content, and the content is determined by those risk owners and the corporate leadership team. So since the last update to this committee, there have been 2 amendments in terms of additional risk entries onto the risk register. So these are reflected in the appendix, providing the full risk register entries, and also set out for you in the covering report in section 4.3. So the first was in relation to public health contracts and the potential risks around delays in the commissioning of some of those key contracts, which becomes risk entry 22. And the second is around risk entry 23, which is, as mentioned earlier in the agenda, reflecting on ensuring that this committee has some insight into risks around social housing, particularly around the compliance with those new social housing regulations. So now that that's on the strategic risk register, that's an opportunity for this committee to see how those risks are being actively managed and get some assurances around the controls in that area as well. So those are the 2 additional entries. All of the other entries have also been reviewed to make sure they are up to date. So we've asked all of the risk owners to ensure the content is up to date, including the actions, and that's all provided for you today. So there's been no changes in terms of the risk mapping, apart from the addition of those 2. So there are no arrows on the risk map today. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, but as I've explained, obviously the content of the risk register is belonging to other officers, but I'd happily take any questions away and come back to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I mean, it's more an observation. Is it possible for the appendices to have the text slightly bigger? I don't even know if it's actually words. It's just lines for me. Is it? It looks like words, just lines on white paper to me. Okay. I don't know how you would do it, but I just can't read that, unfortunately.
It is also online on the website, so you can enlarge it when you're reading it online.
Yeah, I'm just getting old. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. 16, on what page is that? Page 10 of 16. Breaches of health and safety responsibilities, possibly resulting in injuries, harm to staff or tenants. I'm extremely concerned about planning enforcement, in potential buildings that we have in our county that are illegal and that are still standing. And I think as time goes on, the risk of residents being injured is getting greater. And I wonder whether our liability for that is sufficiently expressed by the amber colour. So I'm very concerned about that, because as time progresses, I think the risk becomes bigger and the inactivity continues. I am referring to a specific building, but because I believe the risk is so great, building in Kettering, I'm really concerned now. I've noticed that residents are just going past it and disregarding the fencing, and I am concerned about our liability there.
Through you, Chair, I'll obviously take that away and see if there can be some feedback on whether that needs including more directly in the risk entry.
Thank you. Councillor Eakins?
Yeah, regards almost the same item, through you, Chair, is that I think that the risk rating is not quietly reported as it should be. The risk rating there isn't what it states, but it's actually the failure to provide adequate housing and housing facilities for the people of Northamptonshire. That's where the risk lies. If we fail in producing that, the main risk is failure to provide adequate housing for the people of Northamptonshire. That's either people already in accommodations or waiting accommodations, but the length of voids, etc., that are just not being maintained. They're just stretching and stretching from what we were told a year, 18 months ago. So I think that the risk should be, as Public Councillor Lee said, it should be at least in the red, way past amber, that we will fail to hit those targets based on the failure of operating or monitoring or implementing a proper housing policy. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased that they've put the housing in here. I think Councillor Eakins is spot on. The risk isn't the impact of the Social Housing Regulation Act. I think it's the delivery of social housing or homelessness, all the elements which come under that. That's what the real risk is. It's not about the Regulation Act. So I'd like to feed back to them that should be revisited. And also, I think the points that Councillor Lee and Eakins made about, are those risks sufficiently high? Because I think we've said it a number of times here. We're still without the strategy. We're still without the 30-year plan. We're still without a single HRA. And so I think they all feed through into it being a higher risk. And if there are things which are being done there, so like the housing, the housing improvement, I think that should be recognised in a way. And I think there's some scrutiny needed, not by this committee, but perhaps elsewhere, about how these things progress in terms. It's for them to ensure that policies are delivered.
If I may, Chair, just add to obviously the risk, and you're quite right, we can comply to regulations, but fail in everything else, because you're only complying to the regulations on the piece that you're actually doing work with at the time, not with places that haven't started being worked on. And I think it was quite right that Chair's just touched on the 30-year rule, 30-year plan. We're nowhere near getting a year one plan, let alone a 30-year plan. We've asked that the housing department, corporate, whatever you call it, to keep reporting to us, and they fail. And we get the same answers time and time again. It's in hand, we're working on it. Well, how long does it take to work on something? You've had 18 months, 2 years to work on it, 3 years to work on it. It doesn't seem to be coming forward. I know we're touching now really on scrutiny rather than audit, but we can't audit something that isn't there. So therefore, somebody somewhere has to put pressure. I think the Chair touched on it, that it has to sit with scrutiny. And the sooner that gets kicked in and looks at what's going on, the better it is, so that we, audit, can do our job. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it will be triangulated. I think when the external audit do their VFM report at the next meeting, we'll see what their views are, and I think hopefully there should be some symmetry there in the views of this committee, which is about risk and control, and what they think as well. So I think we can pick that up at the next one, but I'd like that to be fed back. But I'm pleased that it's come in, but I think it just needs a bit more work there. I'll just look and see if there's any more questions, and if not, I'll go to the recommendation, which I think is to note the risk management update. So if we could just, Councillor Marks and Councillor Level has seconded that, and all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. The next agenda item is the internal audit plan development for 25-26. Again, this is an item to be delivered by Rachel, so I'll hand over to Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just a brief report for the committee ahead of me commencing work on development of the internal audit plan for the next financial year. So just to consult the committee to make sure that you're happy with the approach that's proposed, and also to consult you on potential risk areas, that you'd like to bring to our attention as well as part of that process. So in order to ensure we reach a risk-based internal audit plan, which we would bring to this committee in April for formal review and approval, we've proposed that we will visit the Risk Council's risk registers, understand our corporate plan, understand where we want to be and what could stop us from getting there, understand what other sources of assurance we have, do a bit of a gap analysis in terms of the internal audit coverage during the last few years, and also have those discussions with each member of the corporate leadership network, which would be all of the directors and assistant directors, around their key risks and potential areas where internal audit could either give assurance over the next 12 months or also provide added value advisory support as well. So I have mentioned as well the requirements of the public sector internal audit standards to make sure that we're fully compliant with those is how we adopt this process and make sure we're compliant with that. But also in terms of the global internal audit standards, which as I've explained to the committee would come into force from the 1st of April 2025, so that we're looking ahead and making sure we're aligning with those as well. So we'll certainly have our thoughts towards that as well and how we develop the audit plan. So the recommendations really are for you to support and endorse the approach that we're looking to adopt to develop the audit plan that I will bring to this committee for review and approval, but also to kick off that consultation. So if any members of the committee wishes to raise any areas for consideration in the audit plan, that would then feed into the risk assessment process and for us to consider further. I'd be more than happy to receive any of those suggestions as well, whether that be today or outside of the committee meeting over the next few weeks. So the other thing that I would also propose, which I have found really useful and hopefully the committee members have as well, is when we've had a workshop where we've talked through the potential areas for audit coverage, and that's been really helpful for me in refining the plan and making sure that you understand why things have made it onto the plan before it comes to you in April. So if the committee's in agreement, I'd also like to propose that we book in one of those sessions as well. Last year we did it around February time, so depending on people's availability, I could ask perhaps Democratic Services to assist in coordinating a date that would be most suitable for everybody to attend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd be a strong supporter of as many people who are able to come to that meeting as possible. Unfortunately, last year somebody crashed into my car, so I didn't make it. But the prior years, I felt it was really useful. I know it will set the plan for not for this council, but for the next one. But and some of us may or may not be here. But I think it's really useful because I think it brings together all the views of the different committee members, and we've all got a different visor on this, so as many people can turn up as possible. I'd also encourage yourself or people from your department to come, because I think as many people come as possible really helps. We have colleagues there from finance, obviously, and internal audit, but it's a wide remit we have. I don't know if anybody else has got any comments or questions, and I think we should plan that for February if everybody's okay with that. Absolutely good. Any questions or comments anybody like to add? Councillor Lee?
Well, I was going to raise it on the next item about the internal audit progress report, so maybe I should do it there. But if you talk, because I will already maybe indicate my intention to question why one report there was delayed and why another one is to be confirmed. Maybe I'll raise it there. I mean, on what basis we do allow who to delay reports or decide that reports should not be brought, because that's a salient question.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. If there's ever a request to delay an internal audit, it's a red flag to me normally. Exactly. So I think that's a very spot on point. So maybe we'll pick that up in the next section and ask Rachel to comment there. If there's no more questions, we have been, as a committee, we're asked to note the proposed approach to development of the internal audit plan for 25-26 and highlight any risk areas for consideration in the planning process where the committee seeks assurance in the year ahead. And I think that will incorporate the views raised at that meeting in February. So thank you for that. Proposing Councillor Marks, seconding Councillor Eakins. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. I thought we was going to be struggling for time today with the number of pages we had. So we're now moving on.
Good chairmanship, sir.
We're now moving on to the internal audit progress report, and I'll hand over to Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the latest update on the current year's internal audit plan. So at page 10 of the appendix, page 410 of the full paper pack is a copy of the internal audit plan and the assignments that are included within there and the status of each of those as at the time of producing this report and the outcomes of those which have been finalised. So that's just been updated for you since the last meeting. Section 3 of the report, as usual, from paragraph 3.2, provides an overview of the 6 audit assignments that have been finalised since my last progress update to this committee. So each of these reports has been finalised and has an action plan in place. So the first of those was in relation to partnerships and hosted services. So the committee will recall that a new partnership governance framework was actually brought to this committee in October 2023. So the purpose of this review was to look at how that's being applied in practice, get some assurances around how that's worked in terms of controls and improving the control environment for partnerships and also our hosted services. So whilst the partnership governance framework has been, as I say, reviewed by this committee, it hasn't yet been published and the progress hasn't been quite at the speed that we had expected. Things that we've picked out in particular is around how risk levels are assigned to each of those partnerships, and we think that would be useful to have a little bit more guidance around how that's set and how that's assessed by officers, and also to have that initial assessment of significant partnership arrangements, which I understand remains ongoing at this point. So again, we just wanted to see a little bit more progress in that area. One of the key significant partnerships that we looked at was around the Shared Services Joint Committee. We've made some particular specific recommendations around that, around the annual report in particular, to ensure that that's meeting the expected requirements and it's fulfilling the purpose that it was intended to, and made some recommendations around further information on the financial side as well to make sure that we're complete and accurate in terms of those charges. So based on the progress that's been made at this point, there are some actions that remain outstanding and some further recommendations that have been made. So we have given a moderate assurance opinion both for the control environment and the compliance as at the time of producing this report, with a medium organisational impact, and it's an area that I would suggest we will be revisiting in the next financial year. The next was in relation to information governance. So this is an audit that we tend to do on an annual basis, but take a slightly different focus each year so that we can have a good review of each of those areas in each annual review. So this time we looked at a number of the key areas around data protection training in particular. So we were able to see that 65% of staff had completed the training, which was on the e-learning platform that was mentioned earlier today. We have recommended that be subject to a little bit more review at a management level to make sure that we're focusing on that and ensuring a higher level of compliance. We know from experience at other authorities that if there is ever a data breach and the Information Commissioner was to come into the authority, one of the key things they would want to see is that we have a good level of training to make sure that we've done everything we can to manage that risk. So that's something that we would emphasise. We've also highlighted the need to revisit training for elected members as well, with the last formal training having been completed in 2021. It's an area that, again, we would recommend that we revisit in the next few months if possible. We also had a look at the Council's Information Management Board. So this was a good addition to the Council's governance around data protection. We were reassured with the arrangements that were in place for that and the quarterly reporting on the activity. So that does appear to be fulfilling the requirements and the expected benefits of that arrangement, which was good to see. We were also able to confirm that the majority of the recommendations from the last audit had been implemented, and we'll continue to follow up on those 2 actions which remained open. So based on the scope of this year's review, we've given a moderate assurance opinion for the control environment, mainly in the need to strengthen some of those training provisions. But compliance, we've given a good assurance opinion and an organisational impact of medium based on the overall findings. So the next, from paragraph 3.9, was in relation to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which is a pot of money that the council's received to support a number of projects, both through grant funding and also council-led projects. So we got some assurance around the process for approving the application and approval of business and community grants. within Northamptonshire that could be funded through this, and we're happy with the arrangements in place. And there had also been some improvements to the process based on some of the recommendations made in last year's audit report, which was pleasing to see, particularly around things like checks on directors of those organisations. We also looked at the process for council-funded projects, and again we were happy with the arrangements in place for those project proposals and approval mechanisms and the ongoing review of those. And as I say, recommendations that we'd highlighted had been taken forward. Two of the risks that we did identify during the review related to the inability to confirm the exact spend that had been reported for 23-24 in the council's financial return, and a difference in those figures when we were trying to reconcile that to the council's financial records. And that's something that's been taken forward, and we need to make sure that we're tight on those accrual reporting processes and accuracy of those reports going forward. It was also noted already within the service around the risks in ensuring we use that funding by the end of March 2025 to ensure that those projects are completed so that we don't end up having to fund any overruns on the projects as well. So again, it's been noted, it is a risk that the service is alert to and doing everything they can to manage. So on that basis, we have given a good assurance opinion for the control environment, moderate for compliance, and a low organisational impact as at the time of producing this report. The next related to adult social care and was specific to provider failures. So this could happen for a number of reasons. It can happen if a establishment becomes unsustainable and decides to withdraw from the market. It can be just that there's changes in provision and so on, but we looked at the different types of what we class as provider failures. And for our audit, we wanted to take a real focus on the service users, because for us that's where the main risk is ensuring that their continuity of care is the priority, and we have a person-centric approach to these processes. So what we did was we actually followed through a sample of service users through the process and walked that through to understand their experience, the documentation around that process and the package of care that they'd ended up with at the end of that process as well. And we were reassured by the evidence that we saw. We didn't identify any cases where the package that resulted was not considered to be appropriate, and everyone who had been through that process remained within the setting that they were reallocated to, with the exception of one, which was actually due to a change in needs rather than any issues with the provider with which they'd been placed. So that was reassuring. One of the weaknesses we identified was some around the record keeping. For example, we've mentioned here around the review process, so where families and providers or carers are contacted around that part of the review process after the change. There was just some gaps in the documentation there. So we just want to see that we're following our own processes and we have all of the evidence of that. As I say, we didn't identify any issues or any concerns, but we just wanted to see that all of those documents had been saved and recorded. We also highlighted that whilst these are quite challenging processes sometimes, and they do vary in scale, in one case it only affected one service user, in another case it was a number in one care setting. But ideally we would look to have a lessons learned exercise at the end of each of those for anything that could be improved. And that's something the service area had already recognised, and it's something that they were happy to take forward as a formal action to improve this area as well. So based on our findings, we were pleased with the new protocol that's in place, so that gave us a good level of assurance over the control environment. We gave a moderate assurance opinion for compliance based on some of those gaps in the record keeping, but a low organisational impact on the basis that we were happy that the main risks had been managed in relation to all the key areas we looked at. So the next was a financial systems review, which was in relation to VAT. So this was the first time that we'd reviewed this area specifically in the last few years. So we were looking at the process for validation and approval checks upon issuing the VAT returns. This is just ensuring that we are recovering VAT in particular where we can, and ensuring that we have those quality checks built into that returns process. So we do have a reliance on officers when they are raising invoices in particular to ensure that they are applying the right level of VAT. So we have made some recommendations around improving guidance and a VAT manual so that staff do know exactly the right rates to apply. We've also identified the gaps around the government procurement card system, which is something that we've highlighted to this committee previously, where people are not reviewing their transactions on their government procurement card. they're not then coding out the VAT, so there is a potential there if we are losing out on some VAT that we could be reclaiming. So it is something that's also been picked up in the government procurement card audit, which is also just being completed and will be coming to the next committee meeting. So we've actually made formal recommendations in that report, which rather than duplicate across the two. To make sure we're addressing that area. The Council has also been subject to an external review in relation to VAT, so we didn't want to duplicate the areas that have been covered by that, and we've taken some assurance around the fact that that has identified some issues which are already being taken forward in addressing those root causes as well. So overall, we've given a good assurance for compliance, moderate for the control environment, and a medium organisational risk in relation to those findings. And the last report that is summarised was in relation to the pensions audit for 23-24. So I have included a summary of this, but just to reiterate that this audit has not been delivered by our internal audit team. This was an audit completed by Cambridgeshire County Council under the shared authority lead board arrangements. So I have summarised their key findings and their opinion on the control environment, which didn't identify any significant areas of concern and was based mainly on those areas of compliance around new starters and transfers within the pension scheme and the application of the uplifts. And I've obviously summarised that for you in paragraphs on pages 7 and 8 of the report. So that was a quick run through of the reports. Also within the pack today is the latest on the real-time risk assurances. So just to reiterate to the committee, these are not audits, these are just reviews of the strategic risk register entry and just looking to confirm that the controls that have been listed actually exist in practice. So the findings from that are summarised in table 4 of the report. And that's summarised in page 24 of the appendix, page 424 of the full pack. So I won't go through that in detail. There were some recommendations around strengthening some of the wording within that risk entry and reviewing that, so that's been taken forward. And some of the areas, as is noted, had already been considered and were already in action. Also in the report, and already mentioned actually in the minutes earlier, was around the overdue audit recommendations. So the latest update is in table 2, page 21 of the appendix, 421 of the pack. So we have had 58 actions closed since the last audit committee update. We still have 108 which are overdue. And we continue to follow those up. And as was mentioned earlier, that will be fed into some of the new corporate meetings as well to really raise the profile of this and try and make sure that we are progressing those actions in a timely manner. Table 3 from page 22 of the appendix provides full details on all of those which are high priority and over 3 months overdue. I just have a further update for the committee actually in relation to 2 of those actions. So on page 23 of the appendix, page 423 of the pack, and there were 2 actions on the disaster recovery audit, one around agreeing a list of business critical systems and one around conducting the business impact assessment on those critical systems. I was provided with evidence of this on Friday that record of critical systems has now been produced and that the business impact assessments have been completed as well. So those 2 actions should be completed, which is nice to see, and that will bring that down to 3 actions which fall into that category rather than 5. I think that is everything I was going to draw the committee's attention to, Chair, but I'm happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Lee, did you want to raise that point that you picked up earlier on? I'll come to you, Michael.
Yes, I'm just very quickly trying to find it. I'm sorry. Yes, on page 13, health and safety in waste services assignment. That audit, internal audit, has been delayed to December 2024. Mind you, that's next month. On management request, remember, both you and I considered that as a red flag that there is a delay unless it is explained in terms of that there's a change of management or so, but I'm concerned about that. And then also, what is it? There was an audit, thank you, on page 14, Kettering Library Roof Project to be confirmed. That was on the list. That is something I've asked for. And capital project management, the last time a work works on that, on the library, on the extension, was audited. It was found that the capital projects need to be tightened up and need to be managed better. Now there's a serious cause for concern with that project. There are all sorts of things in my going wrong, and the fact that now there may not even be an inspection if it is to be confirmed, that really worries me. Maybe I will definitely liaise with the internal auditor about that offline. But how come that one is now maybe not even going to happen? Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to comment on those 2 points, please?
Yes, I'm happy to comment on those, Chair. So taking the health and safety in waste audit first. So we made contact with the service area in October to commence work on this audit. And spoke to the Assistant Director, and he does welcome the audit. He was very positive about the fact that we were doing the work, but they were due to have a change in the operations manager, which we were actually interviewing at that point. So they were expecting to have a new and permanent operations manager to commence in December. So they asked that we move it to later in the quarter. So on the basis that it wasn't moving outside of the quarter, I was happy that that wouldn't be a material change to the plan. And I think it would be more valuable for us to work with the new operations manager as well. So that was the basis for that change. On the Kettering Library Roof, just to confirm, the to be confirmed was around the timing rather than whether or not it would happen. So it's absolutely in the plan. It's just when the timing would be best. Because what we were doing with this review is following the project through its key stages in the life cycle. So what we want to do is make sure we're engaged at the right time when we're going to be able to add the most assurances. So one of the key parts of this project is around the contract award. So what we wanted to do is tie into that procurement process. So we have already agreed the terms of reference. The audit has now started in terms of the planning processes and is due to commence in January in terms of the field work. And this is to tie in with the award of the contract.
Thank you, Rachel. Michael, do you have a point you'd like to raise, please?
Just very briefly, and just on the VAT, do we have any idea how much we're looking at that we're potentially understating or overstating? Is it particularly material or not?
Sorry, through you, Chair. We're still working through the consequences of what that claim will be, and we're yet to come back with a total number in terms of what that will be, but it will be a recoverable amount from HMRC.
And have we looked at the fact that there's no manual or training and that's being implemented?
Sorry, through you, Chair. No, if it's the error that I'm referring to, I'm just double checking, it was actually a system issue, not a person issue.
Okay, Councillor Lee, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. Just the fact that the card holders are still not all card holders are checking their transactions in 27% of cases. I think that was 46% of cases before. So that was brought to the attention of the senior management team, but it only has had half the anticipated or the hoped for results. Of course, there could be all sorts of reasons, understaffing, people are hard pressed, but still, but you've already said that you are paying more attention to that. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair, I'm happy to comment on that. So, as I mentioned, we've also done the government procurement card audit alongside the VAT. It took place around the same time. And we have seen that the level of non-compliance on reviews has come down, and I'll be able to report that to you at the next meeting, but it's still a significant amount. So what we have had assurance on in relation to this is actually that the controls have literally just changed around this, that we've just implemented a new arrangement within finance whereby if there are no reviews conducted within 3 months, I think 3 consecutive months, the card will be withdrawn. So this is a new control which has just been implemented at the time of the audit. So on that basis, whilst we've identified there's still some non-compliance, and as I say, I will expand on that at the next meeting, we're satisfied that actually a new control has just been put into place. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction with that.
Okay, thank you. Have you got a point? Councillor Eakins, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, item 3.24 down to 3.26, regards to pension payments. I do apologise, Chair. This is going back in my memory bank. That just was triggered whilst we was at NCC, and I had the privilege of being chair of pensions there. There was an issue there where there was money transfers going out internationally, in specific Western Union, where the report of deaths hadn't been carried out properly. And then there was a big piece of work in there under investigating and going through, especially overseas pension holders receiving payments where people had passed away and hadn't been reported in, and their relatives were cashing in still. Is that part of the process that we're doing here, or is it still embedded in pensions over at West Northants? Is it something that we can be concerned of? It doesn't obviously go with people passing away whilst they're abroad. It also people passing away here and not being reported, and then we're still paying out on pensions that not necessarily need to be done, or at a lower rate with the dependents involved.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
Yep, through you, Chair. So in terms of this audit, I don't believe there's been the level of in-depth review on some of those controls. We perhaps in a risk-based audit plan for a pension service, and that's something that has been discussed at the lead authority board of actually they do need a more comprehensive audit plan for the pension scheme, and that's something that's being taken forward. But what I can give you some assurance around is that as part of our counter-fraud arrangements, we're actually part of the Cabinet Office's Fraud Hub, and that's something that we pay for membership of, along with West Northamptonshire, so we're part of that hub. And as part of that, we do get regular updates on deceased data, which is matched to pensions data. And I do know that's one of the key areas where we recover a lot of money because it's preventing those overpayments. So I do know from a counter-fraud arrangement that we have those controls in place, which is led by West Northants as the host for that service. But we do get updates in terms of the savings that have been achieved through that.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a good point about the pension. I think for a number of years I've seen these pensions audits come through, and they're very focused on administration, and specifically small parts of the administration. And I think if we look at what the external auditors do, it's one of their key risks every year, and it's one of our key risks. There's a whole enormous risk around pensions, and it's not just limited to the administration. I think one of the problems is, it's a bit like IT auditors, you've got to be real experts in this, and with all the will in the world, you're not going to attract a specialist pensions auditor into one local authority. I think we need to think about this in what we want to do next year, because I think it's a growing concern for me. You know, there's specific things like that, but there's the wider aspects of pensions, and it drive. You know, you look in the accounts, and what's the biggest impact on our numbers in the accounts? It's the pension fund by a mile. Things change a little. I know they're all assumptions, but it has big implications, and it's really hard to audit as well. And it's not very. But I do think it's a challenge as to how we get that source of assurance over pensions. I think our Section 151 officer is very keen to add to this at the moment. I'm a bit worried now. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. No. I was just going to say that following on from Rachel's comment, it was discussed at the Lead Board Authority in terms of supporting and being proactive in the audit space and providing assurance to all members of the local government pension scheme. Because we're not the administrators, it's really hard for us to really understand what goes in and what they are doing, and to provide us with that assurance, which is obviously where we are trying to look at how partners can audit different parts of the shared arrangement that aren't directly delivering the service, to provide us all with that assurance. So having other members of those internal audit teams carry out the audit on a different basis, if you like, in terms of sharing it around, so we can have different views, different assurances from different partners, so we can have that cross-cutting overview of those activities, whether that's pensions, insurance, financial services, payroll, etc. So they're all being allocated around and being done slightly differently going forward.
Yeah, I think you're onto a point there, and it's one thing that we've highlighted a number of times. When you're reliant on others, other organisations like Children's Trust or whatever it is, you've got a difficulty in, and we're all about assurance, giving assurance to the wider council that the risks are managed and is under control. And I think that's the challenge, because we rely on the audit programs and internal audit, the different levels of assurance that you get from lines of defence, they refer to them as. But you're struggling with those lines of defence when it's outside your control. Okay, so I think that's something.
Can I come back on that one?
Yeah, sure you can.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we know that it's monitored, or it's looked after by under West Northants. It's where the pension team hold up at the old county offices there. But we do have members on that committee, and we do have a member who was an chair of that pensions committee. And when you're looking at, I mean, I don't know what its value is now, but when I left it, it was at 4.5 bill. I think it's under 3 now, or around about 3 billion now. But surely, with that, when we're talking about that kind of money, and that how well it performs, that it can be afforded to put in a specialist pensions auditor, either by ourselves with our funds going into it, or even as joint funds. So I think, when you mentioned that, Chair, there's probably no reason why we couldn't get somebody in there to have a look at it. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we perhaps picked that up in our what did you refer to that day in February as? Workshop. That's the word I couldn't find. That workshop in February. If I can just ask another question as well, in relation to the findings from that UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and we've had some mention of this previously. I think I might be right in the fact that if some things don't change, you potentially could have to repay that money, and they're seven-figure sums. So it could be running into the millions, and I think that means it has to be spent by March. So I'm just prompting the Section 151 officer to think of the response now. Are we going to get those monies spent, or is there going to be some type of concession? Because I think the potential loss of that could be, well, embarrassing to be number one, but very poor if it was. And I just look for some level of assurance that we're okay in that regard from a risk and control point of view, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. From my perspective, I have assurance from the project team and finance colleagues who are involved in that we will be looking to commit those funds by the end of the financial year, which is technically different to physically spending it all. But again, it's working with the government agencies involved in ensuring that we can demonstrate that we can commit the funds, so we can commit it by or before the end of March, and if not, we can have dialogue with the agency involved to ensure that we can carry it forward into the new year on the basis that they are committed projects, and we can complete those projects that we have committed those funds to.
Thank you. That's comforting that we're looking to get some assurance there. Could you report to the committee at the next meeting where we are? Because whilst it'd be, from a legal perspective, it would be determined on what the funding conditions say, and if the funding conditions, so I don't know, I can't tell from this, if the funding conditions say that has to be spent, that's different to commitment, and if they're going to make a concession, let's hope they do, but I'd like to eliminate the risk if possible. We'll get some assurance that we've got a concession for it. Okay. That was the only points I had. Just look to see if any other members have got any points they'd like to raise on this agenda item. If not, we're being asked to note the internal audit progress report attached as Appendix 1 and consider the main issues arising. Councillor Marks is proposing that, and Councillor Lee seconding it. Looking for all those in favour. That's unanimous. Thank you. if there's no other business, I think we can close the meeting, and the time is 15:41. So thank you for everyone's attendance, and see you in January at the next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Well, you never know, do you? Yeah. Yeah, that's jolly. That's a jolly thought, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know, though. Even then, it don't stop, does it?
Thanks, Michael. Time for a beer?
Yeah, just a quickie. I'm not feeling too good at the moment, so I will have a quickie with you. I'm like that. Who's plugged in with my lead?
Thank you.